Superman. And joining me is Michael Uslan. Not only is Michael a comic book expert and a professor of comic books as folklore at Indiana University, but he's also an executive producer of the new film Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, in theaters this Friday. Michael, thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
Also a producer, executive producer of all the Batman reboots starting in 1989 with Tim Burton's Batman.
Correct, yeah.
A lifelong Batman fan.
Absolutely, positively.
Do you root? Will you have a rooting interest in Batman versus Superman?
I guess I shouldn't publicly state it, but I'll let my record speak for itself.
So this Superman serial that we're about to see, it seems to me is of a higher quality than either of the Batman serials that we saw earlier tonight.
Yeah, I think by 1948, the fact that they were doing the first Superman serial, this was big news. This was a big splash at the time. It had taken 10 years for Superman from his creation to finally appear live action on the silver screen, and I think they went kind of all out for it.
Earlier tonight, we spoke of your efforts between 1979 and 1989 when you owned the rights to Batman, to getting any studio to make Batman. And the reaction that the studio execs had was, no, there's no room for a Batman movie. People only care about Superman. Did that manner of thinking exist here in the late 1940s too, in the sense that Superman was by far the most popular superhero?
Well, he was by far the most popular superhero, clearly. But because the serials had to be done cheaply, they really spread the net, and they looked to superheroes without superpowers. So Captain America, Spy Smasher, the Vigilante, Congo Bill, the Phantom, all of these were brought to the screen, and part of the reason was they could be done without a lot of special effects.
As we did with both of the Batman serials, we're going to see the first 2 episodes of this serial. The first one is significant because we get something in that first one that we did not get in either of the Batman serials.
Yeah, here you get the mythology. Here you get the origin story, the destruction of Krypton. You see Superman's parents. You see him rocketing to Earth as a baby and being discovered by the Kents and growing up and becoming Superman. So this was critically important, I think, in the history of the character to have that presented in another medium.
Who plays Superman?
Wonderful guy who I actually knew, Kirk Allen. Kirk just poured himself into this. The people at DC and Columbia really felt they had found the perfect looking Superman. He actually carries Noel Neill and Tommy Bond, who played Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. The poor guy actually carries them out of burning buildings and things. He went all out for this.
And from a directorial point of view, they do a nice job, I thought, with the X-ray vision, considering they didn't really have any effects for it. Just you'll see them go incredibly tight on his eyes, and Kirk Allen has a way of sort of making his eyes big.
Yeah, that did work. I thought it was pretty effective. And in an era where they couldn't spend too much on special effects, same as with the Superman TV series with George Reeves, there are a lot of scenes where people go, oh, look, Superman is doing this, or look, Superman's doing that. And you only see the person describing what he's doing.
However, there is one effect here that doesn't really work, which people will recognize immediately. The flight, showing Superman in flight was clearly a problem.
It was a problem. And what they've done here is they go to animation as soon as he leaps. And it really cracks the suspension of disbelief. Yeah. It's very, very jarring. As opposed to the Captain Marvel serial Republic did in the early 1940s, where the flight sequences are some of the most beautiful, almost like ballet motion that you could ever want to see in a superhero serial.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. From Columbia Pictures in 1948, here are the first 2 episodes of Superman. We have Superman Comes to Earth, and then Depths of the Earth. Up next, Kirk Allen returns as Superman. This time he's facing off against the Atom Man. From Columbia Pictures in 1950, it's Atom Man versus Superman. How does this serial differ from the one we just saw released 2 years earlier?
Well, the most important thing here is we've got Lex Luthor on screen. Yes. And he's played by Lyle Talbot, and it's a wonderful portrayal of Luthor.
We saw Lyle Talbot earlier tonight.
Yeah, he's also Commissioner Gordon in the 1949 Batman and Robin serial. So he becomes known as the first actor ever to appear in two different DC Comics franchise movies.
We saw in the prior serial what really took you out of the moment when Superman flies. They went to animation. It's a little better here.
A little better.
Yeah.
There's still the animation, but now they've added tighter shots of Kirk Allen with his hands outstretched, with the wind machine blowing his hair, and you get that perspective. But because it was done so cheaply, when he goes and flies in a slightly different direction, all they did was flip the film. And if you look carefully,
Yeah.
especially in episode 2, you can see where Superman's emblem is reversed.
So I know it's baffling. So he becomes Superman. I mean, I get it. It's cheap, but turning him around and shooting it the other way doesn't seem like that would be an enormous expense. Maybe they just didn't think of it.
I think they probably thought about it and just didn't particularly care. And in terms of the expense, later on in the George Reeves series, when he's flying, you see his body shot. Again, they did the same thing, and when he's flying in a different direction, if you look really, really close at his chest symbol, you can see it backwards there as well. So they've used it time and again.
We get a couple other staples of Superman in this serial. We got the origin story last time, but here we get the introduction of kryptonite somewhere in this series.
Yeah, and kryptonite, of course, if you go to the mythology, Samson became weak when they cut his hair. So Superman is a modern day Samson, it's kryptonite. Kryptonite was first introduced to the public in 1943 on the radio series. And it didn't actually hit the comic books until 1949. So the movie use of it in these serials really precedes the comic books. You really need to give credit, though, to creator Jerry Siegel, because Jerry wrote a 1940 story called The K-Metal from Krypton, which really introduced what we call today kryptonite into the lore. But the people at DC Comics at the time chose not to publish that story, and it was squashed.
Do we know why?
Yeah, because in that story, kryptonite, or the K-Metal, not only took away Superman's powers, it gave them to other humans. And there was an indication at this story that that extra power might be going to Lois Lane. And in this story, Jerry Siegel had Superman reveal his secret identity to Lois. So as early as 1940, had this been published, Lois would have known that Clark and Superman were one and the same.
Michael, thank you very much. From 1950, episodes 1 and 2 in the serial Atom Man versus Superman. We start, of course, with episode 1, Superman Flies Again.